Let's start off with a quick reminder of what BCDE is. There's a common data environment. We've got that in our name now, so maybe I don't need that slide anymore, but it's worth remembering. So, next generation document management system. It's all about delivering standards BIM. So in particular, ISO 19650, but all the previous standards as well that we've helped support. It's about portfolio management, so infrastructure, estates, programs, and beyond. And you saw a really good example of that with NHS Scotland. Ultimately, this is an acronym that Steve is very fond of. It's about better information management, and that's for projects, assets, and organizations. Importantly for us, this means any device, anywhere, for anyone. So on a desktop, laptop, tablet, and phone, you have access to the same experience. Let's talk about what's new in version 7.5. And the big feature is all about issuing and the ability to send tasks to roles. Seems like a small thing, but actually it massively simplifies the starters and leavers process. So if your project manager leaves a project and a new one comes on board, they can inherit the information that was distributed to them and all of the tasks that are outstanding. They're there and for that new starter to take on board. We start when I'm selecting users, adding them to issues. And all of these are screenshots from actual software, and you'll see a bit of a demo later on. But here I've, in addition to sending this issue to Dean Learner, I'm also sending it to an architect role. And we distinguish those architect roles very cleanly in the interface, so it's no harder to use roles than it was before. You just select them as you did with users, and they appear in the create and send issue process. When I'm coming in responding, I can respond acting as an architect, acting as one of the roles I have in the system. And in addition to sending, I can also forward issues to roles. And rounding out the picture, I can also delegate. So if something was sent to me personally, then I can delegate that to a role. Or if something was sent to a role I'm acting as, so if it's sent to me as an architect, I can delegate that to another role or to an individual within that role. So there's a great deal of flexibility there. To accommodate roles and people having tasks, we've overhauled the issue view, and we're now really clear as to what tasks you might have to complete. In this case, I am both an architect and a capital delivery role, so I have to fulfill actions, complete tasks for both of those. And you can drill down into more information as well, so you know exactly who received it, why they received it, whether it was originally being sent, being forwarded, or being delegated. And the responses we've overhauled as well. So again, it's clear, if I was responding as a role, it's all there in the interface. So architect, response by Paul Horton. And to get a bigger picture for a document, you can see all of the various issues, the transmittals, the reviews it's been on. And you can see, again, continuing with the theme, not only the individuals, but also the roles who received it. A little bit aside to that is a really useful user experience simplification. You can now select multiple issues that have come into you of the same type, and you can respond to them at the same time. So here I've selected 6 issues, and I'm responding to all of them at the same time. And if all of the information is fine, I can just select approved in the first row, and I can copy that response down. So it's really quick to triage your tasks that have come in across multiple issues. The final thing about issuing is we've improved the notifications that come out via email. So they're much more concise, they're much clearer, still have all the same detail as before, but it's easier to work out what you need to do and by when. And so that's all the issue enhancements coming to version 7.5. It's obviously about being able to send tasks to roles, but it's the benefits that come of with the starters and leavers process. Not just people starting and leaving permanently, but people who are going on holiday. So if I have a document controller going on holiday for 2 weeks, someone else can just take that role over and they get all of the tasks, all of the information. It's a seamless continuation. There's no manual overhead in sorting things out. Moving on, we've streamlined our login process, and we also now support Bentley IMS accounts. So if you're a customer, a user that uses Bentley IMS authentication system, with your use in other Bentley products, then you can now share that with within BCDE. And this is all about us becoming part of the wider Bentley ecosystem of products. So here I am logging into BC. We'll talk more about the look and feel of the login process in a little bit of time, but I just provide my email or username, and then the system knows which authentication method I'm using. So the user doesn't need to know, they don't have to try multiple ones before they guess right. The system knows, and it will present the right one for them. And that might be the standard BCDE authentication, or it might be the new Bentley IMS authentication that we support. Or it could be your Azure Active Directory that we support by SAML at the moment. Whichever it is, the user gets guided to log in with the correct credentials. And so it's important when you're adding users as a system admin that they're added and they're given an authentication mechanism. So we've got a new section when you're adding users to say which mechanism that user is going to use. And so then they'll always use it. But the server, we can support all three if needs be. So that's all our enhancements to the login process, to streamlining it and supporting Bentley IMS. But you'll also have spotted that the login process is much cleaner and more modern looking. In fact, we go further than that. It's also fully customizable, and you can do it in the user interface. As an admin user, you can configure what your user base see. So here's the front page. I can see we've got a logo, background color. I have a welcome message and up to 3 buttons. They can all be customized. Also, the background image, that can be customized as well. And that design carries through into the login page too. We also support system messages. We've done this for a while, but you had to ask us to set them on the back end. Now it's all configurable via the user interface on the front end. And so I can see 2 system messages. You might use them for downtime, or you might use them for a user requesting access to the server. Also, any product messages we display through the MPU, they've been moved into the same area. So all of the notifications appear in the same area, and they're much less distracting. The users are still focused on logging in. Here's an example of us using a light theme. We've only got 1 button, a very simplified logo that's floating over a custom backdrop. Here's an example of a different background image, a different theme using the dark theme of a user logging in. You've got full control over the experience. And it's also a very simple interface. So 3 or 4 minutes and you can configure the theme. You can choose a different logo from the one that appears in the top bar if you want, whether positioning of it, whether it's horizontally aligned. You can choose a different background image from the one you have on your homepage. So if you want to show a different facade, then you can do. Similarly, welcome message and secondary actions, tertiary actions, the buttons on the front page, you can hide them, you can show them, you can configure them to link to or show what you need. And find the server messages. Very simple interface. You can add up to 2 server messages, but we don't want you cluttering the interface and people can't log in because there's so much information on there, particularly on mobile devices. But you can choose the color, you can choose the title, and you can edit the text and put links into those messages. So it's really flexible. And it's all about allowing you to stay current and to stay up to date, and you don't have to come to us to ask for these things to be changed. One thing that's been asked for a while is supporting wider logos. So we now support 7:1 aspect ratio logos in the top bar. It looks like there's loads of space in this top bar, but this is a really large screen I captured the screenshot from. On smaller laptop monitors, laptop screens, actually you're pretty tight on space. So to accommodate those wider logos, we've redesigned the search in the top bar, made it a little bit more reduced, but also the task count, we've reduced that in size, and we now also give an indication as to the urgency. So here you can see I've got 6 tasks, and at least one of them is overdue, so we've colored it in red. And that's a really great way to draw my attention to things I need to get on and do. We introduced global map support in a previous release. We've now improved it so that you can zoom out fully to see the entire globe. That's really important if you're a global organization and you've got projects or assets or programs running globally. And obviously you can still zoom in as you'd expect, fairly obviously. But we also support in the map portal. So if you're going into your asset hub or your project hub, that will zoom out and show you a geographical view of exactly the projects that are within that hub. or the assets that are within that hub. So that's BCDE 7.5. Next, I'm going to talk about Workflow 1.0. And this is, as Steve said, this is something we've been working on for a very long time. I'm really excited to give you a first glimpse today. For version 1, it's all about automated workflow for documents. Let's have a quick reminder as to why we're doing this. It's about improving our ISO 19650 support. Because every document, it needs to be checked, reviewed, and approved as fit for its intended purpose. You need to make sure that documents are routed to the right people, and the larger the project that is, the harder that is to do, without a predefined set of rules. And that's where the workflow automation will come in. Access to all information is, or nearly all, is governed by workflow outcomes. So you don't want rejected documents being visible to the client, because it just clutters their view and confuses the overall picture. Importantly, we didn't want to just bake in exactly ISO 19650, because every organization has their own unique requirements. They come with their own background, and we know a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. So we wanted to deliver a tool that would allow you to design the workflow that suits your business. Ultimately, we support all of these things at the moment, but it's about reducing any manual overheads. And also, when you reduce the manual interaction, you reduce errors made by end users as well. We also it's about giving precise control. So you're able to decide, I want this issue to be completed as part of this process once the response is made. You can choose when that happens. So a great deal of granularity to that. Ultimately, we're doing this so that it can become an engine for our users' business processes in BCDE. Now, today that means documents, reviews, transmittals, everything around that. But in the future, it's going to mean contractual forms. It's going to mean asset and project moving information between those two environments. It could mean supply chain tender package management and managing those processes. Here's some example processes actually designed and built in the software. We're going to start with really simple. A WIP document has been uploaded. Okay, the system trusts you, so all we do is rubber stamp to say, yeah, that's a WIP document. Very, very simple workflow. This is getting a little bit more complicated. So in this particular case, for S status documents, we're just going to put them through a simple check. Does it make sense? Is the right information on there? Is it correctly tagged? And the document controller can say yes or no, and depending on the path taken, it's either stamped with, okay, that is the right S status, or it's rejected and it has to be revised. Getting more complicated now, this is a check, review, and approve. So 3 stages. It gets checked. If it passes that, it then goes on to review. If it passes that, it then goes on to approval. And if it fails at any stage, it gets rejected, and then the user has to update it and fix those problems, and then it gets pushed through the workflow again. But if it reaches the end, gets approved, then the suggested status of A or AB at the beginning, that goes to the end on the far right-hand side and is rubber stamped with A or AB, the actual status of the document. This workflow looks like it's a pretty simple workflow, but actually it's an example of us chaining workflows together. So the previous workflow, it sets the status of A or AB. And when that's set, this workflow will take over and say, right, I'm now going to distribute that information to a different set of users. Now, this could all have been one big super workflow, but there's flexibility to break these things up. The final example for today, I hope I'm doing okay for time, is one where we're sending for checking and then we're waiting for multiple responses. So we're waiting for an architect, a building surveyor, and a document controller to all make the responses before continuing. Or I could configure it to wait for at least 1 response or at least 2 responses. So not everyone needs to respond before we evaluate all the responses and make a decision on how to proceed. Let's have a little bit of an overview of the workflow functionality. Everything you're about to see is screenshotted from real software, and you'll actually see a demo later on that shows it up and running. But you can graphically design workflows, and it's all using BPMN, business process modeling notation. So that means we're not, it's an open standard, it's been around for 10 years, we're not reinventing the wheel. It's something that should be familiar to people in the industry. And here's a visual editor. On the left-hand side, I've got all the controls. I can drag and drop elements onto the page, and on the right-hand side, I have what I've selected. So I can see here that I've got my send for checking step, and I can set all of the information, configure all of the information on there. Lots of parallels to how Visio works. If you can use Visio, you should be able to use this tool. Because we're built on the BPMN standard, we support a wide array of BPMN node types. Now, we don't support all of them. The specification for BPMN it's about 500 pages long, but we support the key types for handling document-based workflow. So here's an example. Start events. You can define very precisely what should trigger the starting of a workflow. And that goes down to the criteria. So you can see on the far right-hand side here, I'm looking for suggested statuses in S1 to S7. And if my document's uploaded with one of those, it goes into this particular workflow. We have exclusive gateways that can route the workflow, do the routing for the workflow. So when someone makes a response, we ask the question, was that response to say it was checked or not? And if it was yes, I go down one path. If it was no, I go down another path. And you can define the logic for each of those paths. So there's a huge amount of flexibility. I mean, this is a really simple example showing just two connectors coming out. But you can have lots more connectors coming out of these gateways, each with their own set of logical criteria. Very importantly is that the workflow engine needs to be able to do things in BCDE. The things it can do, it can complete issues. So once a response has come in, you can automatically complete the issue. And that's really useful for just tidying things up, for not seeing lots of sent but not completed issues lingering in the system. You get control over exactly when that happens. You can edit metadata, and this is one of the key things, that a document comes in and you could stamp it with it's pending a check or it's pending a review. You've got configurability over setting all of the various metadata related to the document. Here I'm actually setting an instance variable so it links the document back to the workflow instance. I can forward issues, which leads me on very nicely to being able to send issues. So you can take a document, you can add it to an issue, you can send it on the issue, and you've got full control over who received it and what information is set. So you can set the distribution, and you can set the issue details. This is a fairly simple issue type. It just is expecting name and description, but you can see I'm assembling those names and descriptions using smart variables. More on that a little bit later. The criteria. You have control over the logical criteria on start events, on intermediate events, and on gateways. And you've got a nice graphical builder that allows you to drag and drop, group things together. You can add fields in there. You can pick fields out. So here's a nice field pick that allows me to grab fields from the document, or I could grab context from the project the document is in. So only start this workflow if we're at stage 6 of the project. And you've got lots of equality options. So is the value equal to? Or is the value in? Is it one of many values? Is the value empty or blank? Is it not empty or blank? Lots of power in there. And once you've designed your logical criteria, on the right-hand side, you can see we render the logic with nice syntax highlighting so you can at a glance understand what you've configured. The distribution matrix is used when you're sending or forwarding issues. And this allows fine-grained control of who receives what. So rather than having to design an enormous diagram that frankly would be unwieldy, you can take information from the document and route it to people based upon that information. So here I've said, based on work package, I want this document to be routed to, for work package 1, it goes to the architect for checking. For work package 2, it goes to the building surveyor for checking, and so on and so forth. You can also specify multiple reasons for issues. So I can see that work package 1 is going to the client for information, but it's going for checking to the architect. This is all configurable. You can have tens or hundreds of these rules that would, frankly, the size of the diagram to build those rules in would make it entirely unwieldy, a massive maintenance headache. But work packages, distribution matrices make that much, much simpler, much more elegant. Smart variables I've already referred to. You can basically assemble values. So I'm assembling the name of an issue. I'm assembling the description of an issue, taking in the instance ID of the workflow, the type of workflow, the name of the document, maybe the description of the document or the version of the document. I can also copy a value from one field into another. So the user uploads a document with a suggested status, and then they want to copy that value into the actual status. instances, they allow you to track the progress of an issue or debug issues, and a whole lot more besides. So here's an example of a user looking at a workflow, and they can see the path it's taken through that workflow. So this one's taken the good path, it was checked, reviewed, and approved, and got rubber stamped at the end. But sometimes things do go wrong. When you're in the design process, you're going to make mistakes. We fully understand that. And when there are mistakes, we highlight them. It's very obvious which step things have failed at. And we also give lots of nice debug information so you can try to get to the bottom of, okay, why didn't this work? Sometimes it might be the permissions on your actual project or asset. They're set up incorrectly and not allowing the workflow to work. So we give you the tools to understand that. And now time for a demo. So if I start this, this should play in the media player. Welcome to BCDE 7.5 with the new automated workflow engine. Everything you are about to see is delivered in a web browser. Let's go. Dana Aaron is a design architect and has just started working on the new City Central project. She wants to understand the requirements and deal with urgent tasks she has to complete. She starts by going to BCDE. This is how her BCDE looks. The experience can be configured easily by each customer. Clicking Login gets things started. She enters her username or email address and is taken into the Bentley IMS to gain access. From the home, she has quick access to key information, a dashboard to let her triage tasks, immediate access to recent projects and assets, and an overview map of all current projects she has access to. The content of the home is also configurable by each customer. Dana's going to head into the most recent space to continue her work. From the project space, she has a great summary of the current situation. She can see which tasks she has for the space, confirm basic project details, view the latest design images or site photos, and see where the project is geographically located. The content of spaces is also configurable by each customer. Saved searches make it simple to get to precisely what she needs. Dana has been given the role of architect on this project. She immediately has access to all documents distributed to architects here. This saved search lets her focus on just her tasks. The documents are under automated workflows. Clicking the instance visually shows Dana which stage each is at. Here we are waiting for a check response. From the dashboard, Dana can focus on the most urgent tasks. They can be handled individually or in bulk, where she can quickly approve or reject as she sees fit. As responses are made, the workflow engine monitors all activity and moves each document forward in its process. Workflows that complete successfully result in approved documents that have been automatically distributed to the client. Workflows are fully configurable via the web interface. Additional steps can be inserted. Logic dictates the paths taken. Smart variables enable values to be constructed. Automated workflow for documents gives customers the tools to define their business processes. And we're just getting started. That's just a quick taster of the power of BCDE 7.5 and the workflow engine. BCDE. Less work, more flow.